Good evening and welcome to the new episode of Sonic Junkie Recording Studios interview series. And today we are joined by a longtime fixture in the New York City electronic music scene, a DJ, producer, and a party organizer, and honestly one of my favorite people in the electronic music industry, Run Like Hell.
Hello.
And
thank you.
Ron, thanks for being here today with us, and I also want to remind you that this is not the first time that Ron is here with us, and because they've been the headliner for the season 2 of our podcast series, and you can watch and listen to that amazing set on our YouTube and SoundCloud channels, and I'm very excited for this opportunity to speak to you today.
Me too. Thank you, Sonic Junkie, and everyone involved, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And let's start from the very origins of your music journey. What were your original early exposures to the music, and did young Ron always know that they'd end up in the music?
Like DJing, clubbing, that kind of world?
No, just from the to music generally, from from your earliest memories of the music.
It was the 70s. I was born in 1970, so the 70s had a lot of music to offer. Radio back then was very eclectic. It was folky rock or disco or soulful rock. Members and bands were very, ethnically different and stuff. So that left a huge impression on me because I'm indigenous, I'm Mexican, I'm Spanish. So to have kind of a cultural mixture in the music was important for me to see and identify with. So being exposed to that culturally made a huge impact on me as far as like influences and styles. So yeah, I was drawn to a lot of songs with structure, songs with really good, or tracks with a lot of structure. Good voices, great instrumentation, production techniques that were very revolutionary for the time, which I think inspired me to look for music that was just as challenging or artistic as that era was on me. And of course with the 80s and bedroom producing and synthesizers and stuff like that, and watching DJs from New York City, the whole hip hop movement, embracing like synth music and making beats out of that, really made a huge, strong impression on me. By living in the Southwest and seeing New York and larger cities embracing a new approach to making people come together. For me, that's how I saw it initially. I didn't see it as a way to just make people dance. I saw it as like, this is where people can go and converse, exchange culture. And then once I got older, I think in my 20s is when I really started to see things as DJ culture. Whereas before I just saw it like turntablism and a meeting place for people to connect with a similar interest. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
That takes me to our next question. Who were the artists and what were the records that were the biggest influences for you at the early stages of your career, and how they helped shape your early style?
So I was, as mentioned before, I was really interested in music with a lot of intro, a bridge, or sometimes just go straight into the verse and then have a refrain and then go into the chorus. So hearing that kind of stuff really influenced me to find other music like that. And I think, and later in life, to find dance music that was very similar to that, as opposed to just being a track. Early influences on me were definitely Fleetwood Mac, The Temptations, from the 70s, Jay Rafferty. Who was the other? I loved Kiss. I like the theatrics of stuff. Donna Summer as well. Having a presence along with talent was really important to me. I think that made me aspire to want to go for stardom, I guess you want to say, but not necessarily center myself, but just to be recognized for making art. In the 80s, biggest influence was Prince, because it was a one-man show, and also like creating different groups to show his other personalities. I thought was very important because I was into art, painting and drawing, and working with lots of expression. I looked at Prince as kind of doing that for music. So yeah, so I can work with black and white charcoal in this way, but if I do pastels, I can do it with a much more different type of hue. And then with working with oil painting, I can be a lot more distinct. And at the time I was doing it, I was listening to everything from Joy Division, goth rock like Christian Death, and other bands. What was that band? But yeah, like, and then also like aggressive rock as well. But also I loved a lot of 80s club music. So back then it wasn't really called like, it was post-disco, so it was just called club, you know? Yeah. So I was really into that. And after that came like New Jack Swing. And so, but yeah, always a fusion, you know? Those were always like, I think, what prepared me to embrace DJing and dance music culture. Yeah.
Thank you. And I mean, I know that, of course, New York City has the very important place and part in your career.
Much, yeah.
And originally, what drew you to New York City, and how did that move happen? And after you moved, did you feel satisfied with the music energy in the city, and was it what you expected?
Well, you know, growing up in the States and watching public broadcasting service, PBS, you watched Sesame Street, and I watched that religiously, that and Electric Company. And Electric Company was a fusion of many different cultures together, Latino, Black, you know, so that was really, you know, a great contrast to just like a more presentation of just, you know, just white only type of educational and cultural exchange. So that, like, I got to find out what a Puerto Rican was and what it looked like, you know. And then when it came to like Sesame Street, same thing, but with New York as a backdrop. It was very fantastical, seeing a lot of creatures, the Muppets and stuff like that. So it led to even more embellishing and make a colorful mystery. But I still saw New York, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. You look at the brick, look at this. And I had that impression as a child, but as I got older, I just kept seeing more movies about New York and started to see myself be in a bigger society, something that I could be this and be that, but still be me, you know, because I had many sides to myself that I wanted to be comfortable in sharing. So when on my first trip to New York was in 1990, it left a massive impression on me. I wasn't sure if records were still going to be around because CDs were on the rise. But when I came to New York in 1990, I saw DJs playing in small little bars to like clubs, and the music was just so not the radio.
Yeah.
And that really made a big difference on how I could find even cooler music, you know, aside from just punk and what I learned on the radio. So, or in shopping in record stores and just finding stuff, oh, this producer did that, you know, or this person sang backup on that record. That's how I taught myself about music. There wasn't the internet or anything. So I just kind of followed the breadcrumbs, if you will. And then moving to New York, or that one trip to New York, and then I took another trip the following year, and that left an even bigger impression because that's where I got to really experience even more underground club culture. And I decided, like, this is something that interests me. Let me see what I can do with playing records. Whereas before, I just did a dual cassette deck and made edits from one to the other, from a CD or from a record I would record and send it to the other tape, put it back to the other tape. It was very, very, those are my early production and DJing days without having a turntable. Yeah.
And it's been now more than 2 decades since your move here. I'm sure that...
Yeah, like since 1998. I lived in New York, yeah.
And I'm sure the difference between the New York back then and New York right now is radical. So
yeah, from the first New York I saw to like moving here in 98 to even just 15 years ago, and then now, generations definitely influence the city, yeah.
Yeah, and I cannot not ask you this question today. What's the origin story behind your stage name,
Okay.
Run Like Hell? And
Well, it's a bit of a controversial one, and maybe PG-13 type of definition. But and when I was in high school, I really loved LSD and had a close group of friends that would like to trip with me, and we all loved watching The Wall, and we loved The Wall. I mean, to us, it was a dark record, but it was just it was something we could identify with because, there's this depression and there's this like resistance and there's these like moments of solitude, but you questioned it, So yeah, and we didn't actually watch The Wall this night, but we were listening to the album The Wall, and Run Like Hell came on, and they were just doing this silly joke on us because we'd always kid with each other. We'd like turn the music down, or hey, look at that, it's actually there. So, and when you're high, especially on LSD, and the amounts that we took back then, you see a lot or hear a lot, feel a lot. So we're listening to it, and they just kind of like turned it down. We're just like, run. Every time they said run, 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 run. And it was just like, so it became like Run Like Hell. And we just kind of left it at that. We giggled and laughed about it. And over time, I did try different DJ names. But, here was like 37. I was like, let me just stop with like calling myself a bird or a demon or whatever, I'm just like, or just my full name, because that's just like, I'm just not that person. I really want to make people feel something different when they hear my name, and kind of question it and have a bit of sense of humor about it. But so I came up with the pun and just resurrected or revived the Ron Like Hell moment, and stuck with it ever since, and got a lot of DMs back in my days of signing up to Facebook, like, oh my God, your name is so cool, we must be friends, kind of a thing. So, yeah, so it proved to be a good career move,
Yeah, I think you made a great choice, and I think it's just perfect.
Yeah, cool, awesome.
And yeah, let's go back to your early New York years. Like, how did you get accustomed to, and how did you put your foot in the door of the like nightlife community here? And was there any specific like steps or relationships that led to your successful career in New York?
Yes to all of that. When I first moved here, well, I started working at a record store officially in 1996, and this is back where I come from, which is New Mexico. Albuquerque to be specific. And I was with that job for about almost a year, maybe 2.5 years. Details get fuzzy because I started to get gigs in Santa Fe and Albuquerque at that time, 2 separate cities. So yeah, I had that record store experience, and then I moved to New York with the job transfer through a retail company, and my whole goal was only to manipulate that to a certain degree to help me just pay for a few months' rent until I could get new money from this job and then go forward. And I went to this one record store, and I was like, wow, this is the kind of record store I would love to work at. It had trip hop, it had drum and bass, it had hip hop, it had house, deep house, acid house, tribal house, hard house, techno, tech house, and then went into like psytrance, and then it became like a whole trance wall. It was just like overwhelming to me. I'm like, wow, this is exactly how I listen to music, or when I go to a rave. There's this chill out room, there's a second room, and then there's like this main room, and whatever it is, I was like, this is a cool place. And I went in there, and I met a clerk there who really liked what I was buying, and I was like, hey, we talk outside afterwards. So I said, hey, I gotta go smoke a cigarette. This is back when I was smoking. And he would talk to me, and I came back for another visit to purchase some records, and he's like, hey, we're actually looking for a manager. I was like, okay, well, let me try this. I do have some experience with managing other people. So within a few weeks later, I became a manager of Satellite Records. And Satellite Records at the time was the #1 internet shop, because the internet was really small at that time, in the USA. The only other store that championed that was Black Market Records in London. So I became a manager of this store and had to manage a lot of raver kids that came in high, angry after being high, not wanting to be there, not wanting to put away records because they just wanted to listen to music. And it was a hard job. Imagine like trying to manage people that would be your friends. So I learned a lot from this experience. So I started working for one of the leading record stores in the entire world, because once the internet started to get bigger, 99 and 2000, it just became like such a solid business. And they moved to a new location and got to even get in more people. But when it was in this small spot on the Bowery, just half a block up from CBGB's, I sold records to a lot of big names, from Danny Tenaglia, Masters at Work, David Morales, Satoshi Tomi, Joe Classell, Francois K, who I'd come by late at night on Fridays, and he and I would talk, and I'd plan new stuff for like 2 hours at times. We'd talk about music. We became very friendly at that time. Bought records for Danny Krivit, the entire Body and Soul collective. Other names, Frankie Knuckles. On 2 occasions, I helped him buy records. Ashley Beadle. I mean, it's just, and certain radio personalities that were playing dance music on Friday and Saturday nights, college stations in New York. Yeah, it was just, I got to talk about music, share music, sell music. It was an intense moment in my life.
Yeah, those are some huge and heavy names.
Yeah, and I was really blessed. I had a gift at that time. And no one else that I know really had that opportunity. And if they did, it was a different version of it. But to do it in New York and to have all these people look at you to say, hey, what's next? It was like, of course, I had stage fright or whatever, like celebrity, like, hey, I don't know how I should deal with this. But then over time, it got a lot more simpler, because they're people too. And they're just looking to make people happy.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And also, I see how much your record store experience helped you to connect with people, but how helpful it was also to you as an artist and as a DJ, and how that encyclopedic knowledge of the old records helped you discover yourself as the DJ. Yeah.
It's weird, because I saw myself and what I wanted to do, and then I became a version of myself because I was doing what I wanted to do. And then once I kind of matured, then I can see that everything I was doing was part of who I am, So working with that music and how it shaped me was constantly not just hearing a repetitive beat. No, because I hear that in every style of music. It's always the same type of riff that goes back to that to really make the song successful and connect from one verse to the other, from one solo to the other, intro to outro, whatever. But hearing dance music every day in my job at the record store was really cool, because I got to hear structure. I got to hear how drums sounded different versus the other, how one genre treats that versus the other, how one genre actually borrowed from another genre and made something unique, but still being trance or being house or whatever. So that really conditioned me to like the music more, to like a lot of it a lot less, because you get to hear good production versus bad production, and production that shows someone who's ambitious and is growing, So I think that helped me to be more intimidated by producing, but at the same time also give me some insight as to what to look forward to if I'm going to make a mistake. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I want to, I have a few questions where I will quote some things about you from online, and it says, it's about how your style is very eclectic, and the quote, it's blending bold house vocals, raw techno rhythms, experimental obscurities, sometimes all in one set. Have you always been this diverse in your selections, or is it something that came with the experience and time?
When I first started DJing, which is to the public, was in 1996. And yeah, I would like to take in B-sides instrumentals of 80s records and put that in with house, trip hop, just because I just wanted to be different. I heard a lot of DJs play hip hop instrumentals, some hip hop tracks mixed in with acid jazz, trip hop, down tempo tracks at the time. But there were 90% of it, 80% of the music they did was genre specific, records that came out within the past 3 years. So definitely house friendly, techno friendly, hip hop friendly, all that kind of stuff. And this is when French house was really taking over, French producers, and their use of samples was very dynamic. But yeah, so I'd always been kind of eclectic. Even in buying music and making mixtapes in the 80s, it was always like folk songs next to rock songs and R&B songs, not like current ones, not just old ones. Cocteau Twins. I mean, it was very, the whole output was like to be ethereal, but also like be grounded, So, and over time, I would say there was a moment where like I went genre specific because I was intimidated by New York. I'd just gotten this job at the record store. So I thought like, well, I have to really show them how I play house. And then after like a year of that, I was like, well, this is boring to me. Let me go back to me and let me fuse some stuff. And I did, and because I liked a lot of disco even before I came to New York. So I started just mixing that in, which I also found was very common in New York. So I started to go with like even more like shifting BPMs or the pitch and kind of introduce another thing, and a different genre of music. So that was cool, and sometimes I was successful. A lot of times that I was unsuccessful at it, I learned more from that than winning the crowd. So, and I just brought that with me into today, where I think a lot of people can be more genre politician, is what I call it. There can be no vocals in techno. There can't be any techno mixed in with the house or something like that. And I think that, music is music, and if you do it well enough to where the crowd and the moment called for that, and you responded well to it, then what the hell do they know? Like you did that as a fact because it did actually work, So I think that's the strength, and I look for that when I hear other DJs and people listen to albums, etc., and they're like, "Wow, that's a left turn of a song," but that's them, So it's inspiration.
Keep an open mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You always can. If you're not learning, you're not living, as they say. Yeah.
And now we're reaching the part of our interview which I'm most excited for. I want to talk about Wrecked.
Because,
okay. Yeah. And
the next chapter of my New York career.
Yes, and I know that you co-founded it with Ryan. And what was the origin of Wrecked? How did you meet Ryan Smith? How did Wrecked came into fruition?
So I worked at a record store in 2008, and I started in the spring. Summer hit, and it was August, and this guy comes into the store and, is asking about records. And he's like, oh, I like house, I like disco, but I like a lot of like, this and that. And I'm like, okay. So I gave him basically 8 to 10 records, and he bought all of them. And then he came back the following weekend and was like, hey, I really love the records. My friends love the records. Do you have anything else like that? He's like, but I don't have that much money. So I sold him like 3 or 4 more records. And then he comes in like 2 weeks later and is like, I really want to start mixing my records. Do you have an idea for a turntable? So then I suggested him to get a turntable. And he did. And that was his intro to like wanting to be a DJ, whatever. And he played these records for his friends and was like, hey, this guy's really good. Ryan and his friend were wanting to start a new party. And they were like, hey, this is before like SoundCloud was really big and streaming mixes. They're like, do you have a mix CD? And I'm like, of course I do. I have like 5, and like, I'll give you this one because this one really shows some range and more, I don't know. This is what I want you to hear. So they heard that and he played it for his friend and they absolutely loved it. And it turns out that they were auditioning me for a night, a concept that they were going to start at in downtown Manhattan. And they wanted to call it Rocket. So I DJ'd all vinyl for the first 7 parties. And then along the way, Ryan was asking me to teach him how to DJ. So I did. So one night he opened and did his attempt at mixing, which is actually pretty good. So I guess I'm an okay teacher. Yeah. So that kind of formed. And then the party ended. We lost the venue. Ryan's friend went off to do some other projects, so we were kind of looking at what do we call ourselves. So we just started just went under the radar of Ryan and Ron like hell, and did some one-off parties here and there. And it was 2011 where a friend of ours called and was like, hey, I've been presented to take over this venue this Saturday. but I can't do it because I'm going to be out of town. Do you guys want the night? And we're like, sure. And we scrambled for 2 days trying to find a name for the party, any kind of influence. And Ryan was looking through all of these like old gay ephemera magazines, and there was a picture of this guy in really like tight like denim hot pants and this like white tank top, and he's up against the back of a wrecking truck. And it was for the Saint, actually, a very notorious gay club in the 1980s, late 70s, 1980s in New York City. And this night was called Wrecked. And the lettering was the same as we use, except everything was facing the one direction. Whereas with us, we kind of reverse in the center. So we decided to call ourselves, call the party Wrecked.
Yeah.
And then over time, people said, we had so much fun at Wrecked. And then we're like, well, in order for the party to become more successful, we should go by Wrecked as DJs. So it's not focused on one name or the other. It's this concept, So that was the origins of it. And we started in a little small basement room that had a drum set still in the room and lots of speakers. And I mean, you could barely like walk around in there. The capacity was maybe like 50, 60 people. We'd pack in like up to 100 at times. You could barely move, but that was the whole idea. It was just to really feel dance music and stuff, because dance music like that was making a comeback, especially if it wasn't EDM heavy or pop heavy. It was like, we're just trying to show that this is an international sound, as well as new records and old records. And then the rest is history. It just kept growing and shifting, changing venues, shifting spaces. And so it's become a massive thing. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, cool. It's a history indeed. It's 14 years and running.
We just celebrated 14 years. Yeah, I mean, I never saw that coming with anything in my career.
I hope it's many, many years more.
I hope so too,
But my next question is about, comes out from there. Like, it's been 14 plus years now. How do you and Ryan keep these chemistries going, and what strengths do each of you bring to this great collaboration?
A lot of it, I think, came from having a lot of fights initially. Well, we got along, and then you have the business going on, and you have a lot of, I want it to look this way, I want it to look that way. Then there's compromises, and there's some arguments along the way. So we got closer in that sense, but also distant. But then found out that these are things that work for how we can communicate with each other and how we can protect the business by working on that relationship specifically, because I'm not working or managing a team of people, as he is not either. So for us to focus just on one other person that's basically a version of you, because you're working for the same goal, was a mountain to climb, but not a very steep one. So it was really cool that we could connect so well along the way. I would just say that if you want something to be successful, make sure your integrity is intact. Be honest, not dishonest. Be forward with what it is that you want to see. And one thing I taught Ryan was it's one thing to be liked by a lot of DJs and be in the booth and get a lot of high fives with all the DJs, but I said that's really going to cause you to not look at what's in front of you. Not the gear, not the CDJs or the vinyl, but you need to look at the crowd, because they showed up for you. Everyone else that's hanging out with you in the booth is trying to give you their approval, but the approval's out there.
Yeah.
So you really need to show up for them more so than try and get, love from your industry peers. That's going to happen anyway. And they're already showing that by being there. But you really have to connect with your audience and listen to them, and see what they're vibing with. And if you take left turns and this and that and they love it, give them more of that. You know what I mean? Like the next time, So I just think that he and I really meet at that point. And I think that contributes to the success of Rect, is that we pay attention to the community and the dancers that we want to connect with. And it's all of them, not just in one orientation versus the other. We've always been super inclusive, So I think that's really key to making it successful and having it just last and stand really tall, which exceeded our own expectations.
Yeah, that's a lot of wisdom there, and I hope not if not all, majority of the party organizers had that understanding. And
I would like for them to do. You know, I think it's going to make, more than it's going to help them be a better person, it's going to help the industry at large become a lot more engaged and not lenient, but just know exactly what they need to protect and call community, you know?
Sure. Thanks for those words. And yeah, I hope we reach at least some auditory.
Yeah. It happens every day, yeah.
Yes.
Keep your eyes open, yeah.
And another question I have coming from the RECT theme is that you feature a lot of young, local, emerging artists always. Was that always your part of RECT philosophy to like give the scene to like emerging new people? And are there any specific New York City based young artists that inspire you and you think that within the next few years they're gonna be some like big names?
Well, yeah, so when RECT was initially starting and moving venue to venue, we struggled with making sure that we could still get the crowd to show up. So with that said, we had to book talent that was recognized by the community so that they could actually show up for it, especially if we're going to go out from being in Williamsburg friendly area to all the way out in Gowanus, which is a neighborhood that's really far, you know, away from like the gentrified popular areas where, you know, it wasn't Bushwick, it wasn't Williamsburg, it wasn't Greenpoint. So we had to really have names that drew within that. But I told Ryan, as soon as we're going to go into a techno club, I know and love techno from a long time ago, you know, and I really wanted to bring in Detroit young artists that play techno. It's fast, or it can actually just be like a little bit slower tempo and very electro, very funky, but still very electronic. So when we moved into Basement, I was like, okay, we're gonna have a breakthrough with certain artists. First artist was Chem from Heron Sauna, and then we had Dr. Rubenstein, then went to Partalk, and then I think we shifted, maybe we took 1 month off. I can't remember who the other guest was, but then I really wanted to have and show a lot more strength in the techno variety that was at Basement. And I said, well, it's got to go black, very much so, you know, can't just be DJ Stingray. There's a lot of really great talent here in the States. So, and it's young. And so launched it with Carlos Front, and then we went to LSD XOXO, which is a big thing because their sound is actually kind of like progressive house and Kylie Minogue, but mixed in with really fast kind of like, you know, footwork style kind of techno and stuff. So that was really refreshing. And it brought in a very young demographic, which I was so pleased with, because in order to like have something, keep it fresh and interesting, you really have to embrace the generation at hand, you know, and generation coming up. Otherwise, you're just kind of to the side and you're just a gatekeeper and you're not really focused on where you are today, you know? Not like worrying about the future or trying to stand on your laurels of what happened in the past. No, you need to be present, you know? So that was really important about embracing young talent along the way. And the shutdown put a little stop to that. So, but going beyond that, when we had the opportunity to bring the party back, I was like, Ryan, I mean, we're already on a train of thought that was very successful in introducing people to new things. But, you know, the shutdown really made a lot of people better DJs. If they were already trying to pursue something, they started to come up with stuff. And with that first year of getting back out there playing for people, they really excelled. So going to the last part of your question about who am I influenced or some people that I really pay attention to is Kyra. I think she's really amazing. Yes. She's embracing some DJing. Her style is fast, but not uninteresting. I think it's constantly solid and very, very cool. A lot of color in her presentation of tracks. It can go from semi-grayscale to like distorted, quirky kind of loudness and fusion. I really like, who's the other DJ? Really love D Diggs. That's a really great representation of some like older kind of thoughts on older music mixed in with some other stuff you haven't heard, which I really love. And Keela Patrick Jones, I think, is one to watch as a DJ. Be really interesting to see how they progress as a producer if they go that route. But Kyra's really cool. Dee has actually done some productions, which is very interesting. Yeah, there's just a lot of, and I think New York is where it's at. Berlin had it for a while, but it's by some strange twist of fate or luck, New York just all of a sudden has these emerging artists, and we're just bored, and we want to have fun and show people that we're gonna take something different and make it fun and cool.
We took the torch.
Yeah. They really kind of burning it brightly, holding that. It's very inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And we already spoke about generally the New York City scene and the comparison between the 90s and now, but Rect is the queer party series, and how did the New York City queer electronic music scene change, and did it become like more musically adventurous, more inclusive, or do you still find some issues finding the safe spaces or any other sorts of issues?
Well, like we say in our emails, we first started the party to represent, we're music first. We wanted to present music that we didn't hear a lot of in gay and queer nightclubs. And we wanted to send that message without insulting anybody. It's actually more about engaging that audience as well as saying, well, that's great, but let's hear something different too, because we like what you're doing as well, but everyone's different. So, and this is our idea to kind of bring up because it just wasn't happening. So that was really fun to do, and I'm glad that people really understood that and did not get offended by that. As far as creativity, I think that side was already creative, but on a different type of mindset. So when we came in, being creative was about embracing people and showing something different, and it just evolved. A lot of people compared us to Cocktail d'Amore in Berlin and Honey Sound System on the West Coast. So it was really cool to kind of, and Horse Meat Disco, which was in London.
Yes.
So it kind of seemed like there was this whole moment of these 4 different collectives and entourages kind of like saying the same thing, but not, we were just kind of, apparently it was just part of a generational thing. We just wanted to embrace a lot of styles that were happening at that time and mix it in with the stuff that made us, And as far as like how there was a queer music production force or movement, that was kind of there, but didn't really kind of pick up strong up until like 2022. Maybe there was some origins even before that, but I would say people really showed that. They showed up to work saying, I am this, and there's a track literally it just came out, So that was really cool to see, and I'm really happy that people within that community don't feel like they have to hide or go behind a moniker to kind of take away from who they are because they're proud of that. So that's really, really inspiring to see, and I hope that happens across all levels of people, whatever it is that your interests are. Just say it with pride, and stand on the work, So, yeah, I think that answers all of it.
Yeah, like truly safe space for everyone, no matter what.
Yeah, and as far as like that is concerned, I think that enables a safe space because you get to hear and see people that are doing something that you're like a dancer. Like it doesn't mean that they can still contribute to that by showing up and dancing. And good promoters want to ensure a safe space where a lot of uninhibited things can happen, such as I can express myself, whatever it is, no body shaming, That's all very important. I want the world at large to embrace that. They could take a big cue from that because people are people and we're all beautiful, It's our actions that make us ugly, if they're wrong, if they're ill, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And, let's go back to your personal musical journey. Like it's been, you have quite an experience with DJing, and wanted to know how you manage to keep your music fresh and how you manage to continue growing as an artist. And have there ever been times when you felt a bit burnt out or like in a need to like reinvent yourself throughout this journey?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll start with answering the latter part of your question. Yeah, burnout happens a lot. I think that happens with any profession, with people. And for me, I feel when that happens, I feel extremely guilty because, or wrong because it's my life, it's my passion, But I think that it's just a matter of like resting, like giving your ears a rest, taking a little bit of moment to get outside of your circle, outside of the drama or world that you inhabit all the time. Step out, go for a walk, embrace something, go to the gym more often, cook, have a hobby, paint or something like that, and maybe have some music playing in the background and then kind of reconnect with that. That's something that I do to help me to cure those blues of when I'm just kind of feeling like, and it's not because I guess it's more about ego death, you're like, I'm not connecting with this right now. What's happening? And then all of a sudden you get reassured. Something happens within you, at least for me, and then I'm back in it. So I think those kind of experiences really bring you back to loving music. And one thing that keeps me involved with it is definitely being eclectic and drawing on my influences. Like I said earlier, in 1996, I was working at a record store, but it had like maybe didn't even have, it had an electronic section, but it was mostly like Mo-Wax. It was, the buyer for it was, a rock guy, and he just heard this trip hop stuff and thought it was so cool because it felt like Pink Floyd to him or something, There's a lot of Can, mixed into it, so all this like proto krautrocky things making him feel like, I can embrace trip hop, whatever. But that story aside, I had to sell jazz music, rock music, funk music, Celtic music, hip hop, everything, ambient music. So a lot of that is part of me, and like I said earlier on the drive up, it's like I had to learn a lot about all kinds of music. Knowing about a lot of it is fun, but I had to learn a lot of stuff that I didn't care for and had to sell stuff that I didn't like. And it wasn't a bad compromise. It was more about standing behind the business that gave me a job to share this love of music and to help the customers that came into that store connect with what they liked, even though that's not something I liked, So I think that's the best way to keep pushing music and let people enjoy the music they like, without being a snob or a genre politician again.
Well, we already mentioned that you played a podcast set here, and you have the recurring show on Lot Radio. How different it is for you to play like radio, live stream podcast versus the like club full of people?
Well, a lot of people say, and I've talked to a lot of other DJs when they do radio shows from NTS, Red Light Radio from a couple years ago, Lot Radio, etc. It's different because you don't have an audience. There's not people dancing in front of you. So some people just take it as like, I just have good records and I just want to play good records. And sometimes I'll approach that, but at the same time, I understand at the end of the day that people want to hear something as they work or while they're painting or reading a book or something. So for me, I approach these shows as a soundtrack to a moment in your everyday life. And it is more fun to play to a crowd because that's the majority of my experience with DJing. But when it comes to radio show, I do take it a lot more personal and try and give something that's a conversation with people that I can have or have yet to meet. So I think, and it's also adventurous to kind of go across a lot of different things, Some shows I'm proud of. I just did a Lot Radio show recently, and I wasn't locked in, I had the idea, but there were certain moments where I was just like, I don't want to hear this right now, so my mixing's a little bit off. But over here, I like this a little bit more. And then be like, okay, but this is too much. I want to go back to my original concept. So you have a lot of ideas that can overwhelm you at times if you're not playing to a dance floor, because then you're in the zone, you're in the program, you're into the repetitive beat, and that inner rhythm kicks in. The effect creates great synergy between the DJ and the dancer. But it's different when you make a studio mix at home and stuff like that. So I don't know. DJs who play hard dance sets at Lot Radio shows is kind of cool to me and also a bit of a turn off, because some can do it really well and others it's like, well, you didn't have to do it that way, you know. But it's okay. Everyone gives it a shot. Even I did the other day, and I didn't quite hit the mark, you know. But I learned a lot from it.
Yes, those are great points. Thank you. And I mean, your reputation is mostly built on DJing, but we've seen you dabble in remixing and producing. And how do you approach that process? And is that something that you're interested in going into more in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I always had this dream of becoming that at some point, because I do have very little music experience as far as playing two instruments, violin and tenor saxophone. But over time, I tried to learn how to sing, hit notes, discover what pitch was with vocal cords, and that was in my younger years, in middle school through high school. But what I learned then, and went for much more of a mixed media presentation of art through painting and drawing, my love of music was still very strong there. And it still is to this day. And I am working on some remixing right now with a friend. I actually did a track with an established music artist last year. There's a couple of people that want to work with me, and I want to work with them. Their expertise is, I could never reach that. They put in like, 10 to 20 years of experience in the field, and I can never really match that, but I can learn a lot from them. And it's an avenue I'm definitely going to jump into more as time goes on, because I've heard so much, I played so much, I have a lot in here now, because from all the transitions of DJing, I have a lot of songs that came out of that. And when I drive around, I don't listen to the radio. I constantly hear music in my head. So I need to get that out of my brain, What's that movie, Harry Potter, where the wizard gets his wand and pulls out a thought and drops it into a round
the
pool.
goblet or something.
Yeah, I need to do that with my head and just put it onto a record, That would make I would save a lot of time.
It's nature's radio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, it's a soulful thing and all of that, and there's a lot of dreams that need to be realized, and I'm committed to making that happen sooner than later now. Yeah.
And do you have any signature DJing style you would say that sets a unique flavor to your music and like makes run like hell?
Well, I like to say that I house the rock and I rock the house, because I like a lot of rock music, but I like it to be danceable. And I really love house music. So I always used to say like psych rock music is very similar to acid house because it's weird. So, and I guess that's what it is. I like weird. I like left turn kind of music, very eclectic in its own right, and fusion, I guess is what you call it. So so it's just kind of like a jazz principle. And I like rock music to have a bit of funk to it. So I don't know, I think that's just that would describe like what I do with techno, what I do with house. It's a lot in one, and it's a vision is what I want to present, because I think there's a lot of people that stick by the genre and do it one way and want to represent certain things. And I love that, because that's what inspired me to even get into mixing beats as it is. So I don't shun any of that. I just think that everybody should be original in their own way.
Thank you. And I have another quote that I want to quote. So you said that when DJing, perfect beat matching isn't as important to you as good phrasing and storytelling in a set. And can you elaborate on that philosophy?
Yeah, so I think that it's important that that it's good to get off grid, because life is off grid, and the listener wants to go somewhere. But it's good to break a train of thought, because it can become a lot of entitlement, a lot of convincing. Like I said earlier, a lot of ego can come into it, even as a dancer, because you're hearing something, you just feel like you have to stick with a template. So sometimes I think it's just, all the time actually, I think it's better to represent how great of a music listener you are by playing music. So mixing a bit, and when I mix sometimes I'll just be like, well, here's this phrase, I just want to like bring it into here, because that's what brings the soul to the moment or to the mix. So, and also not staying at 126 or 136 the whole night. Mm-hmm. I think you should drop it down, maybe accelerate at certain points. And you should always fight the desire to go harder. Sometimes you can go harder by playing a little slower. You know, get sophisticated with your taste in music and what you buy, and be a salad, cucumbers, you know, lettuce, carrots, you know, all kinds of colors in there, whatever. Like, just be healthy and make it adventurous and fun and colorful. You know, like, so I try and do the best I can with that. And I think even if it's not mixed perfectly, I think that programming is key. I think that's what makes you a really good DJ and someone I can trust in to, like, hey, that person has good taste in music. Doesn't matter how great their skills are. I can always see what they're doing, feel what they're doing. I think the feeling part is more valid than anything.
Yeah. Thanks for so much wisdom shared today, because like I feel like we could get cut into the phrases and it would be just like pure gold, a lot of it.
Awesome, good.
And New York City electronic music scene has always been intertwined with social causes and communities, like queer community or like refugees, and like the most recently the Palestinian and Ukrainian communities. Do you think the electronic music community still is a dynamo for some like social change and mutual aid, or has its role in that decreased with time?
I think it's always going to be up and down with engagement for political causes, and how we can move people forward to being aware of their surroundings, whether it be in their town, village, whatever, to beyond, because of the internet really makes us see things that we don't want to see, as well as give us things that we feel we should see, whatever, some sort of entitlement with that. For connections, technology is great. You can't put it down because we all use it every day, and you know, it accelerates a lot of conversations. So when it comes down to how dance music culture and dancers and DJs can be socially aware, I think as far as my community has been, I think that it's always been a response to social attitude. Growing up queer, gay, whatever, like, you never thought you'd ever be able to get married. You never thought it was always a life behind, you know, closed doors and having conversations where you'd have to, okay, now we can talk about this kind of a thing. Whereas today, I think that's still kind of happening, but not as much. So with that power, by me actually voicing that out, I think that's a way to say that we all embrace politics. And with music, a lot of people don't like dance music. So for those who are in it, is already kind of like counter culture.
Yeah.
So, and I think you can get a lot of different personalities that are really do show up for the music. They will respond to social causes and music makers, celebrity, whatever, talking about political subjects. It should continue. I mean, anything can continue. And I think that if people have a good cause and don't put others down on anyone's rise to, you know, being recognized for their art and craft, I mean, yeah, be engaged, but in a positive way. I think that if you lead by example, change can happen, you know? We're seeing it now with a lot of bad people taking each other's side and accelerating. I think it happens the same for positive change, you know, for people who are being good listeners and have compassion and empathy. So, and I find a lot of empathy in the underground dance music culture, specifically New York, you know, because that's where I live and work with, produce for, etc. Mm-hmm. So I know from what I know from the city. You also said about, you know, minorities or other cultures coming to this town. Like I had no idea that New Rica kind of music was a fusion of, you know, Puerto Ricans moving to New York. I had no idea that the salsa had changed like that. It embraced more jazz than it did back in their native country. So, you know, it's just cool to see how a lot of groups stand by the pride of their culture, but that's the same thing as reacting to a social cause, political cause like Ukraine and Palestine. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And you also mentioned the role of internet. Like, how important nowadays are internet and specifically social networks, and how do you navigate it? And do you think they've changed the like music scene to better, or do you think their effect is not that important?
It's extremely important for good reasons and bad reasons. And it's mostly good. Like I said earlier, embracing technology, you have to. It's everything at this point. And now with AI, that's a whole other subject. We don't have to go into that. But the more you can do with your mind and with your hands and say something the best to your knowledge, I think is the best way to do it. As far as like, it's important for people to understand what it is they're working with and not take it for granted. Know your social media apps. What are they doing? Who are they owned by? Your power is more powerful than them because they rely on you. Like every ad they're pushing in your feed, that's for you. And you can choose to, it's not just scrolling. You can just choose to like turn it off and not go in, practice that, because we're really conditioned to present ourselves, to influence others before we even become an influencer, if that's your thing or not. That's what it is the power of influence. And then now it's also commerce, where people can make money off of what they're sharing, the memes, no music involved, not even a celebrity, it's just a joke on something or a pun. They get money from that. So, and that's being paid for by a corporation that may not see things the way you do. So what are you going to do with that? That's my question to people with that. It's not to pin you against the wall and say you're wrong or you're right. It's a simple question. How are you going to proceed with life when you're just going to say, I hate this, or I don't like this, or whatever? Like, when asked, when presented with that, when going to bed at night and waking up with yourself, what do you feel with that, And it doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be in the middle, like, well, or whatever. It can be like, well, these are the reasons why I do it. And so what I use the terrible, horrific meta company for is only for the commerce part. I'm not even making money. I'm not a creator. I don't have a blue star next to my name. I just want people to know what it is that I'm doing, and it's always about music, or to help push a cause that deserves a better light on it. So, for those who use it for personal reasons, I love that too, but I'm not like them, as I shouldn't be. They're not like me, and that's very okay. So you do you, I'll do me, But I do think that people should really look at their participation in something that they may not know fully about, because the times have changed. So it's really important to see what door you're walking past, what room are you in, Yeah. I think it's very important right now with technology.
Yeah, it's good to be connected, but it's important to know how you are connected.
Yeah. And a lot of strategies also taken from the George Floyd protests. Yeah. So now we're like, this current president says that there's not going to be any mask wearing, there's no more protesting. Certain things, will just be manipulated because they got to see what people did. Yeah. And that's how they're working. That's how they get you, as they say.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality.
Yeah. Steps ahead and steps backwards at the same time.
Yeah. But let's move back to more positive.
Please, yeah. We love to dance,
Yes. So the topic I want to touch is that you've done some really great back-to-back performances. Like one of the most recent ones that I can remember is the one with Aurora Halal. And I just want your insight on what are the main differences for you on how you approach your solo sets versus the back-to-backs, and how different is your track selection in those two cases, and how much importance it is who you're playing with.
Well, personally, it's like I can be me, and I always adjust me based on the gig and who it's going to be, who it's promoted by, the venue, the sound system, and the crowd that this promoter brings, and what the club brings as well. So I wanted to complement that as opposed to a full hard subscribe or compromise, because your name is attached to it, so they want to come hear you. But for those who have heard you by reputation or know of you by reputation, you should still be yourself, So that's how I approached the solo gigs and all that. And when it came to B2Bs, I was just like, well, I only ever did that with Ryan, with Rect. So when I came out of the pandemic and all of a sudden they're asking me to do B2Bs, and I'm like, well, I know their mixes and, this and that, but is this going to work? And I had to take it with some deep consideration, and it worked out really well. I think the first one actually was with Aurora. It was for the merge party, and we closed it on a very snowy morning in January. But we connected really, really well, and I was really beside myself, and as was she, about like how this connection just worked out. So and then several other B2Bs came about. One was with Dr. Jeep that I was really, kind of like, wow, what's going to happen with that? Because, his style is so much more like halftime and, this, that, and the other. And it's a lot of like modern stuff, which I like, but I don't really champion that genre. I like to buy stuff from that. It was really fun. And it was like, it was great because like I got to present what I think he would do with me, and vice versa. So that's how we kind of locked into stuff. It was really, really nice. I got to get a little 90s, millennial friendly and stuff like that. And he dropped some classic stuff, but I was like, hey, I leaned into him like, you don't really have to, go with the classics. Like let's go newer, harder, whatever, So we really shared a good connection in that way. So B2Bs can be really fun, but I think you have to really observe who it is you're going to work with, so that the dancer has a better and positive experience, as opposed to just high-fiving behind the booth again. Like think about the dancers. So B2Bs are cool, and with Aurora, I think we've had up to maybe 3 or 4 B2Bs now. So when we're behind the decks, like when we talk about tracks before the gig, we've never mixed with each other. We just play a track, start talking about something, and the other person plays a track, and we start talking about something. All of a sudden, we just stop the track because we're talking about something else, something personal,
This can wait.
Sunburn, skincare, taking the bike into the city, we just get personal. And I think that's what really helps us connect on the decks, because we're just like, you do you, you do you, and it's very complimentary. Yeah.
That was such a legendary back-to-back, because I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I remember everybody texting me, and the night before nobody went out, so they could wake up early in the morning
to
go to Nowadays.
Amazing.
And listen to that back-to-back. A few staff members from basement were like, okay, we're not sleeping after this. You old men have to wake up at this hour. Texting me, and obviously I wasn't able to wake up.
I remember you texted me.
I texted you too, like, we have to go to this back-to-back. I was talking about it. So
That's great. That's great. Well, that's what else could you ask for, I'm like, I could pass away now and be like, okay, mission accomplished,
Phenomenal. I didn't get to listen to it, unfortunately, but everybody was talking about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've done 2 Nowadays. One was a week after I had to close Sustained Release, which is a whole other story in itself. But it ended, and we're all so moved and so emotional. And I looked at her, I'm like, I'm looking forward to making this happen next week. And she's like, oh my God, that's right. Because she was so overwhelmed with putting on Sustained Release, the festival itself.
Oh, yeah.
So then we got into the booth, and it was really cool. We did 6 hours that time, where the most recent one we did 4 hours. But I could play with her for 9-10 hours, and time would go by a little slow in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it's just like, wait a minute, we only have an hour left, which is how it always happens with her.
Looking forward to the next one.
Oh, me too. Oh, yeah.
Are there any new projects that you're excited about working on right now, and what's on horizon for Run
parties, reductions, or
anything?
I have a few ideas brewing, and I'm going to talk with a couple, club people, club owners, bookers, about what they might think about some projects, some concepts I have as far as like nights at clubs, working with a different thing that's complementary to Rect but not Rect. There's a party I did at Paragon, which is closing soon. Thank you, Paragon, for all the love. But I did a party called Plexus, and that was about me working with one DJ. I would open, they would play, then maybe we'd B2B at the very end, which is similar to my other concept, which was Exalt. But the Plexus party was really cool because they had a second room and it was only open for like 4 hours. So I would curate the DJs downstairs and get the guest of my choice upstairs, and which is really cool. And I want to bring back my Exalt party, which was launched at Basement before Basement had a side room. And the idea was to have where I opened and get the guest to play and have it be not just techno, but proto-techno, what they thought proto-techno was. So from freestyle to certain type of house tracks, but it all still worked and was friendly to Basement's concept of being a techno club. And with my vision, they also wanted to embrace that as well. So I had a really good, successful launch of that party. But I'm so precious about it that it was the DJs that I wanted to work with me were either unavailable or the timing just didn't work out for me as well. So
Nice.
there was only one, but I do want to bring that back. That is something I want to resurrect.
So it's just a matter of time.
It's a matter of time, yeah. And working in this industry, timing is everything. Not just because it's like what I feel, but also, do they have a slot? Am I going to be available for that? And now, is that person going to be ready for that? You know? Yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And I want to move to more like general evolution of electronic music. From the past, is there any particular era or movement that you look back fondly on? And what do you think changed from that era to the modern day that it's a thing of past?
Well, I mean, I love the 70s and like what it did, the fusion of music, post, quartet, 4-piece band kind of stuff into like multi-members, jazzy rock and R&B inspired rock inspiring R&B, all that. But that's like a foundation. But like as far as like my favorite era, early 80s was really important to me because I got to hear a lot of lo-fi, simplistic kind of use of synthesizer and the 303, 808, stuff like that. So in the Lindrum stuff, which I heard a lot in Prince's music, and it was all made in a very makeshift studio that got bigger and bigger with time, which is why his music got cleaner year after year. Yeah, so I would say post 70s, early 80s, and I really have a strong love for anything made from late 1988 until early 94, primarily being 1990 to 1993 is like the core of that. For some reason, I don't know what it is. I really felt like trance was evolving, house was getting different, it was becoming more like songs and less just kind of like obscure tracks and samples and stuff, which is really cool. Yeah, so that's like a really strong go-to. When I listen to music, I'm always listening to like the indie dance era of the British scene, the growing Chicago house and Detroit techno thing that was happening at that time, Inner City coming up with Good Life and all that. That was definitely locked into that era. And, again, like with going to 1993, drum and bass was getting big, trip hop was starting, Massive Attack had made a huge impression on stuff, so that was showing a lot of diversity in what you could do with a dance record, especially if getting a commercial release. And, from Screamadelica to Sabres of Paradise, Andrew Weatherall was really important as far as showing a love of post-punk, synth-pop into modern-day acid house, and then went off into do trancey kind of trip-hop stuff. So that was a moment that I haven't seen replicated. Doesn't mean that everything since then has been, terrible, but it just shows that things have evolved from that, and it was a very expressive moment for me. So it resonates with me through a lot of music buying and track selection for mixes, both mixes and live gigs.
Yeah, those are definitely great times, especially for synth music. And yeah, definitely they can't be replicated. But on the flip side to that, what are some of the modern newest like movements, new genres, new scenes that you feel excited about?
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of a hard question because I think a lot of it is definitely leaning more towards 90s style production with trance and progressive house and stuff, specifically like late 98 into like early 00s. But that's really cool because that shows like, X-Lennial to millennial to Z kind of stuff. And I think that's completely fascinating. It's so cool. Because to me that says like that's their Beatles. That's their Fleetwood Mac. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. And that's what that kind of stuff I want to see. Because when I was a kid, I mean, I wanted music to speak for me and not for my mom, or my uncle or something like that. So as far as like new productions are concerned, I like a lot of, it's weird because I always think about it based on like, well, that's what's going to happen at that gig of mine, as opposed to this. So there's like a lot of like modern, like, soul stuff. I love Doechii. I love Madison McFerrin, who's a really brilliant artist that does really, it's not lo-fi soul, but it's just kind of like, it's underground soul. It's not big. It's not it's going to pop up in your title, as like a big recommendation, but it will show up at some point. So that's when it comes to like soul and R&B stuff. Huge Beyonce fan, so of course anything Beyonce, I'm totally into. Yeah, I'm a Hive member, big time. Going to 2 of the shows coming up in New Jersey. Yeah, I'm going to see her opening night and the following Thursday. Yeah, if I could see every night, I would. It's such an incredible album because she did a country album that's just absolutely perfect.
Cowboy
Carter. Yeah. So, and the artists that were featured on that record were really cool because that kind of ties in with what I'm saying now. Taking people out of one era or side of music, genre specific, and then bringing it into a whole other light, using your power. Going back to what you asked earlier about working with younger talent at Rect, that's my goal. I want to give to this community what I didn't get out of the community that I was drawn into in my younger years. It's not just about being inclusive or having my name to it. No, it's like, that's my legacy. That's how I go to bed at night and having like just a restful sleep, is because I got to share something that I have now that nobody gave to me when I was younger. So, and with music like that made now, I think that's something I listen to when it comes to releases and what is this person doing? Kind of like I said about social media and those companies run it, like, where's this power going to? What's their power being used for? And if I don't agree with that, then just go to another artist page, It's just that simple. Yeah.
Yes, and I met a lot of, especially electronic music artists who tell me how, especially some introverted people, how much anxiety it brings to be watched by a room full of people for hours. How do you deal with that, and do you have any specific mindsets, or methods on like how to deal with it and how to feel comfortable?
Well, I've always been a wallflower, so for me to kind of pursue DJing, I thought I could just I always thought like, well, I'm going to be like in the 70s, you're going to be up in this like high stage, looking down on the crowd. No one's going to see you. You're just going to look down and go like, and then go back, and you can just kind of like, okay, let me get conceptual, But that changed a lot, In the rave, you got to be in a booth and people could see you. But in the 90s, nobody faced the DJ, except they wanted to be up close and just go, yeah, and they turn around and hang with their kids and look at each other or look at the visuals, whatever. And it was only like in the 00s where everyone stared at the DJ. Everyone became like what I saw in Japan back in 1998. Everyone just staring at the DJ, and a moment come up like, oh, It was really cute to see. But to see that kind of happening in the Western world was very interesting because everyone treated it, and they started calling it a show. Yeah. I'm going to a show tonight because rave was passé. This was that, even clubs, So I had to really work on embracing that. Stop looking down so much, look up more, you know? And I was always acknowledging the crowd, but it was just more like this kind of a thing. And, you know, now I'm like being genuine about it. Because for a while, yeah, it took some practice, and I was, you know, I wasn't phoning it in, but I was like, you have to show up. You just look up, you know? Yeah, so, and doing that now, it's kind of second nature, but I definitely wasn't that person to start off with. I like too much melancholy for me to say that I'm like a fist bump kind of DJ. Yeah,
That's great. I've also read that in addition to music, one of your big passions is cooking.
Yeah.
And how does cooking inspire you, or like parallel with your music work? And just for fun also, like, what's your signature dish?
Let's see. Well, you know, signature dish for me would be like wrecked, you know, like if you're to describe that, or a mix that I love that maybe other people can't take, but I love it more than they do. So during the I already like to cook. Cooking for me was always something really fun, and I started to get much better at by like 2006, 2007. So, and with that kind of energy, it was like, okay, buy some more. What's this spice? What's that spice? You know, try it with this and try it with that. Because I wasn't really good at using the internet. And even then, you couldn't really find like recipes and stuff like that. Unless you were in some like food cult or something. You know, progressed over time throughout the 2010s, and then the shutdown happened. I'm like, oh my God, how I can't do what I'm doing. I have to, like, my whole career is built about being in a small room with people heavily breathing, you know what I mean?
Sweating.
My whole life came down to, like, you know, I was about to like really go strong with my career, and all of a sudden you're telling me that I can't do this. So, you know, shell shock, you know, complete PTSD, complete like, life is over. So I was like, well, but there's one thing you can do that you love, instead of going to work in a cubicle and hating life again, like I did with jobs back when I was in my younger 20s. I was like, well, let's do cooking, you know? And people are always gonna need to eat. And there's a lot of people out there who don't like to cook. So let me work on that and make some, get better at cooking. And I love it, because for thinking about the future and how I couldn't mix songs, I was like, well, if the future's gonna be where I can't do that, and only just do it from a studio or through YouTube or whatever, how about I can mix for people and they can actually still receive it? So mixing the dishes, mixing the spices, stirring things up, you know, like this is my new way of mixing.
Yeah,
it's how I
see the
save
parallels.
myself. You know, I was like, okay, I think this is a good parallel, and this is actually going to help me get out of this depressive state that I'm in. Yeah. I'm New Mexican, which is different than Mexican. It's not Texan, it's not Arizona, it's not Colorado, it's its own place. Mm-hmm. It's an indigenous food mixed in with Spanish food, colonial, as well as Mexican food. So my favorite thing to make is enchiladas, which are corn tortillas mixed in with sauce and different types of protein. It can be cheese, beans, beef, chicken, whatever. So my thing is like to do vegetarian style, but like I have this one kind of recipe for red chili that other people don't use, and I use 3 different kinds of cheeses. So yeah, Ron's enchiladas are my signature dish.
Oh, yeah. That sounds yummy.
Yeah. I can't do it vegan. I'm sorry. It's got to be dairy friendly, I think.
That's all right.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Right. And another question, and I think for me it's going to be the last one, is that, like, after accruing so much experience in this scene, what would your main suggestions and advices to the young aspiring artists be? And what is it that you wish you had known when you were also beginning your career?
Share. Just keep sharing. Because what you're going through is unique, but it's also very similar to what other people are going through. They just say it differently. So I think the more that we can share helps other people feel less alone. So when you show up to, like, you know, dancing, gig, whatever, don't push it to be friendly and try and be everyone's friend. I was watching this speech by someone the other night, and they were really showing positive reinforcement and just logistic by saying like, it's okay if people don't like you, take that as a compliment, because that's what difference is. That's how I can be who I am, because I'm not that. So that's a compliment to not be that, to be you. So, so sharing good wisdom, sharing life experiences, and feeling the room. You know, there's a time and place for things to be said. A lot of us want to say things. We just want to say it. But sometimes it's how it's delivered is how you get heard. So, and I think you can definitely apply that to music, to art, fashion, a lot of things. Like, make your move when you feel like it's time to make it right, because then you'll feel a lot better looking back on it. I think it's the best thing to do. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a certain power, influence, whatever it is that I have. I want to share that, you know, whether the world at large sees it or I just see it. I just want to, any attention I get, I want to make sure that other people are built up in that too. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thanks for the great interview. And I think now some of our guests in our public would like to ask some additional questions.
Beautiful.
So.
And, yeah, just,
Everybody ready?
yeah.
This is how we pivot.
Well, first of all, Ron Lykel, Ron and Jen.
Thank you.
What a great interview.
Ron, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Again, thank you so much for being here, and this whole interview have been very informative in terms of technical part and in terms of mentality of how to approach certain things.
Thank you.
And how to navigate through this wilderness. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for sharing that
Thank
knowledge
you.
with us.
Thank you for feeling it.
So what caught my attention the most, among other things, obviously, was when you mentioned that you had a specific moment in your career where you were genre specific, and then you chose to expand in the different directions of music. And me and you had this conversation about social media having some kind of an influence on us,
Yes.
and being programmed to do a certain thing, and how it feeds us the certain bullshit, for the lack of better words. I apologize for my French. So to formulate that, in my question is, when you were switching to that, when you were switching from that genre-specific, one-directional music into this spectrum of directions, did you have some kind of a pushback, I guess, within yourself, or did you have some kind of a insecurity, whether it's going to resonate right with your listener, and if you did, how did you deal with it?
Mm-hmm.
And would you recommend any kind of specific way to think about it, to be more open and to be more of yourself? I guess that's my
So
question.
yeah, so going from like, you know, being eclectic and then going to being genre specific and then expanding on my original approach, but also entertaining one way of presenting music. Yeah, all of it changed me. Every time I approach a gig with a different type of personality or insight or influence, whatever, it changes it up a bit. And yeah, it kind of felt like at one point I'm like, well, am I doing the right thing? But you know, at that time it was a response because clubs were not open anymore. It became like much more like bar driven, and people showing up with their iPods and having playlists and stuff like that. Which at first I was like, oh God, this is going to kill my job. But then I just saw people like, wow, this is great. They're hearing music, all kinds of music in one night, and they're just having fun and they can still converse, you know. But yeah, going from one thing specifically into being more expansive, I just think that, yeah, am I still good enough to get them on the dance floor? Am I still going to be a
So
good
you have
house
those-
DJ?
yeah.
Yeah, like am I actually going to be? Are they going to accept me for being as real as I am about loving techno, about loving house? You know, and I think the strength is how you mix it and what records you have. You know, is it the good stuff, or to me maybe there's some bad stuff, but maybe for that DJ and their crowd, that's that thing. I've always said to my friends, it's like, if you go check out a DJ and they're playing stuff I'm not liking, but they feel it, I'll hang out. I'll like it because that's what they're doing, and it's just so brilliant to be inspired by that. Even though I would never buy that music, and I would never go there on the regular, but that's inspiring to see somebody really feel it and deliver it. Because what I do, that's what they're doing, but in a different circle. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Again, thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Just my question is about the AI. So, a good friend of mine once told me, we were just speaking about the jazz, and he told me, okay, once the AI does the mistakes on the jazz, like, okay, that's it. He's gonna do like crazy stuff. But what do you think about until then? Like until the AI does the mistakes on the jazz. I mean,
Yeah.
like I would say like some next 20 years, because right now we are like on the beginning of something that we don't know
Right.
what it is. So what do you think?
I agree.
How it's gonna influence the music production, or just just about the music?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's already a big concern right now about AI putting out music. Like someone wants to make music, but they just have an idea. So they just talk to AI and AI will make it. And then they take that track and put it on Bandcamp or submit it to a label. So we're already starting to see a flat line of creativity, of just saying, well, I just want this, just give it to me. And then it's done. And then everyone accepts it as like, well, that's what's happening. That's what everyone's doing now. So that makes me sad. But at the same time, it's like, we're flirting with the idea, you know, are you with me? Are we going to have a nice dinner? You know, like, I think we're really with that moment with AI. And as far as when it crashes and it can't do that thing, will it? I had the same question myself. Will it be that since AI is told by humans and a collective of brains, and then below that is data, because there's always one master plan, and then the data is built up of all of our engagement with anything. So when that crash happens, is it going to be because it comes up with its own personality that discovers ego? You know, because we do feed it a lot of psychology, medical psychology, not just the psychology of like, what now, you know, like, so how I think about this sometimes, and then it scares me, because then I feel like we're definitely living in a sci-fi Hollywood film, you know, Skynet, Terminator, Matrix are all the same movie, you know, so you take it. I kind of feel that way about AI, but, you know, I don't also want to go into a rabbit hole of conspiracy theory with it either. So I'm just as curious, and I do have that same question, and I do have some theories, but let's see what happens, you know? Get the popcorn out, you know? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hi. Thank you for this amazing interview. I'm a huge fan of yours, and you're like basically the reason I got wrecked, and it's you're amazing. My question is like, you were talking about like the diversity of genres and how you can like explore yourself, but when it comes to like actually going on a gig and crowd has kind of like expectation what you might be playing, like what your genre is, and like what if you just feel like playing something a little bit different? And you were talking about like how you like to like look at the crowd and like be like, oh, are they enjoying it, like what's happening, like, you know, you want to make sure that your music is for crowd, not for some other DJs. So how can you like what would your advice be, like how can you balance that, like you're like switching between genres and also like maintain the same like, you know, your like for what you're known?
Yeah,
you know? That's my question.
Well, it's weird because I hear that question and I almost hear like the answer within it, because it's like, I think it's showing up definitely takes a different certain kind of energy, but it's also based on the education that you have when it comes to DJing. And then there's the whole idea of like, well, I always think of like DJs kind of like off to battle, you know, you suit up, you got your records, you know, you have this vision you have, it's how you, that's your defense system. or that's your war tactic or whatever. So it's your style. And yeah, it can be challenging to think that, oh, I'm going to this gig, will they like it? So now with technology being so advanced and we can play on CDJs, I can invest in a nice big hard drive where I could just put up like, up to over 2,000 songs or maybe up to like 3,000 tracks and have different playlists. So I have a lot to fall back on, but sometimes I find that to be too much. And then I'm getting too eclectic even for myself, or like, but not even like executing that with mixing, but thinking in my head. And then I get too much in my head, and then I'm like, wait, I played a track that I didn't want to because I was too distracted, because I looked at the time, and I don't want to just loop and put people into a loop as well, So what I do is I actually just sometimes show up to the gig with no more than 150 songs and just say, this is what you're going to get, because I have to be more genuine about it. And I think that can help me go for the oddball stuff, because I section out a portion of that for like some left turns or some eclectic kind of stuff. But I do feel that if you're going to be booked for a specific promoter or a promoter and they have a specific concept and the club has a system that will support said music, then it's good to kind of be more leaning onto that genre. Like Basement, yes, it is a techno club, but it's techno feels good in there, And with Studio, their side room, you can pretty much play anything. But when I go in there, I like to go through the decades of dance music specifically, not just go and like drop like, okay, we're going to go down to like 98 BPM from 126 or something. I could if I wanted to, and I've done that kind of like in mid stuff, because I do think that if you can clear a floor, good DJs can win everybody back. Because if it's a festival, it's just people just want energy jumping up and down. You're kind of just, you're cool about it and it's fun, but it's like they're not really hearing you. They just want the world at large. I got my money, I need excitement, I'm ready to go. It's not like I came here for that person. I came here for so many people, I don't even know when they're on anymore. I just want to have fun. Yeah. So that's one way to think about how you pull music specifically for a gig. And but yeah, just have respect for where you're going to go and where your music's going to be played and who's actually going to hear it. I think that's the best way to kind of answer your question, and that saves all of the eclectic moves and surprises. 'Cause sometimes you even surprise yourself, like, wow, that actually worked better than I thought. With the crowd response, or was a nice bridge into the track after that. Yeah. So if you DJ, practice at home. I tell people when they're trying to learn DJing, try to mix any two records together and discover why that is impossible. Not just because it isn't. Tell me why it isn't. Because of how you heard things, I think that's the best way to figure out what a genre is and what the similarities are between the instrumentation and the composition.
Cool. If nobody has a question, I have one more question. Videographer asked me to stand up, so
Good.
hi.
Hello.
So I want to quote the post that you made that I actually screenshot,
Okay.
and I dropped it in the Sonic Junkie Records group chat.
Oh, cool.
And I made the point of that's how it's supposed to be, and you said Ract is first and foremost about music, and if you're not there for the music, this party is not for you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was beautiful statement of principle, of ideology, and the courage. The courage because, we're, in the end of the day, all trying to survive and make money out of our craft and what we do. And that statement, while it complements the ideology and principles, it does risk X amount of people to say that's maybe not for me.
Right.
So my question consists of following. How do we create the scene in New York that is dedicated to what we love, and how do we protect it more? Because fact of the matter is, the city of New York does not support this culture. At least that's how I feel, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like
this city does not allow this culture to thrive, like maybe different cities in the world, and a lot of clubs are struggling financially, and a lot of communities are struggling financially. So how do you draw a line between, well, not the draw line, how do you balance between a business and the principles that makes your business and the party series worth exploring? Because unless you do have those principles, it's really not something anybody wants to explore, right? Because that's what makes you an individual. So how do you balance that? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a business, and it's like you have a running business, then you have like personal pursuits that you really want to get the crowd to. Yeah. So, Ryan and I just show up with like the things that we like, and it's not so much a take it or leave it, but for lack of a better term, kinda. But we're not really compromising their interests either. Like, we're doing the best to what we know that they like and what we feel they will appreciate. And if it didn't work, then we know that that didn't work. So next time we come back, we're still going to have the same idea that we have and work with a different approach, you know? So, and I made that statement because, one, it's like in this current climate with social media, everyone feels entitled that I can be there too, I can be there too, I can be there too. Well, I come from an era where you always had a very, very strict, hard, threatening door person. And that was, to me, to show like they were saying things that I would like to say, we all want to say, but don't, because that's their job. And once you get in, you definitely feel part of an intelligentsia, an actual community, because there was this wall for them to get through, to penetrate, you know? So me making that statement kind of comes from that philosophy, but it's also very inclusive because I'm still inviting you to show up. But if you show up and it's not for you, you just simply don't have to come back. That's what happens to me. You know, I go places. Yeah, absolutely. As I said earlier, like, you know, just because they don't like you, that's a compliment. Because that actually backs up what it is that you do, you know? So it wasn't to be, it's showing exclusivity by being inclusive, by showing like if you feel that there's something that people don't get, but you get,
Right.
and you think this party might be for you, then we're there, you know, and give it a shot, you know, pretty much everyone. But I think for those that it really can resonate, particularly you, because you champion underground dance music and you like the underground world of that and the clubs, you know, from dingy to maybe not so polished or whatever, you know, you see that and you can relate to that. So that's what I kind of meant with that statement, you know.
It was a great statement. When I read it, I was like, this is what it's supposed to be all about. That resonated with me so in a different levels of depth that I feel like that's how it's supposed to be. And it was very well put that you're being inclusive by being very direct about it. And that's how it's supposed to be. You know, we're presenting this culture based on the not the criteria. We're presenting this culture based on these values that we all have, and some may not share it, and that's totally fine. You know, just carry on and find a different spot and have a beautiful life.
Yeah.
Keep smiling. No, I just wanted to point out that was great.
Well, thank you. And I think it's also about going to the safe space thing. It's really important to, I think by expressing yourself in that way, you do help people to feel safe in that environment. Even though it feels already comfortable there, they feel safe in expressing themselves. Yeah.
Hi. Very interesting interview. And then my question is, what do you think about industrial hard techno science and crowd in Brooklyn?
Well, one, I'm genuinely fascinated and love to go to those parties. You know, I loved a lot of industrial EBM, you know, harder dance music styles in the late 80s and early 90s. And I saw how it was, you know, I'm a goth. You know, in high school, I was very into goth stuff and still am, you know, wear lots of black, not just for techno's sake, but also, you know, I also call myself a bat. So, you know, I'm still very much in that, what is it, black leather and lace kind of thing, you know, kind of world. But when it comes to those scenes specifically, I think it's really cool. You know, call it grayscale, whatever. I like to see the drama that's in music and to see like a certain kind of movement really kind of take from what has been done, but then like reinvent it in a way that's very modern and can scare away pain. You know, I think it's about release. I think when it comes to good aggressive music, like metal, hard techno, lyrics that are just kind of like very politically charged, like hip hop, like really strong hip hop. If it scares people, well, maybe you should do some work on yourself because there's something in there that needs to be scared away, you know? So I do think that when it comes to Brooklyn and that hard scene, it's good to have identity, but it's also like, man, I kind of do feel like I hate life. So let me get out here and really sweat it out and hit it hard, you know, because I'm gonna leave and I feel like I was with my people, with people that feel life, you know, similarly to me. And that's a beautiful thing, you know? I think, you know, being eclectic or whatever, like, you know, I'd like to champion a lot of different things, but at the same time I don't, you know, because people can say a lot better than I can. And that's why I like to go to those events, because the knowledge of that music and the range of artists and tracks is just like, wow, I had no idea that there's so much of that in this one scene. So it's inspiring. Yeah, end of day, it's totally inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonic Junkies. Thank you, Jam.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure. Mwah. All right. Woo.
Guys, run like hell. One more time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our amazing
Yeah,
and
you
beautiful
made
Jem,
my job
who
so
always
easy.
delivers the interviews.
Check this guy out. Check him out.
I mean, you made my job easy. You are the best.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
And amazing people with great questions.
Woo! Give it up for the crowd.